Hi there, and welcome to our show. Today we're introducing a new show for New Orleans that's actually called The Spirit of New Orleans. I'm Frank Skurlock, and I'm proud to be running as a candidate for mayor of the city of New Orleans. The purpose of this show is over the next few weeks we're going to be outlining the issues that my team has identified as very important to the residents of the city of New Orleans. The first platform that we came out with is called the ACE platform. That's A-C-E. A stands for a very important issue that affects each and every one of us, and that's affordable housing. Second, the C is about crime prevention. Once again, that affects every single person. And E, the tail end, we believe is what can actually help correct a large part of that, and that's the education. Now, while the ACE platform sounds amazing, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good the platform is without an economy, and economy means jobs. That we're also going to be getting really deep into about the things that we would like to see change in the city. Most people sadly know that New Orleans is one of the highest incarcerated cities in the world. Today, as we discuss the affordable housing, we have a special guest. We have Eugene Benn. He's with an affordable housing group that came down after Katrina from New York City. I happened to meet Mr. Benn at several events around town, and I thought he'd be a great candidate to sit here and talk to us about what he thinks that we can do collectively as a united team for the citizens, that's City Hall, and the residents to actually make a difference. You know, as a candidate for mayor, let me take a second to tell you about myself. First off, everybody wants to know, where'd you come from and what's going on? The first answer is, I was born at Baptist Hospital. That's right, many years ago, back in 1962, I was born at Baptist, which is right off of Napoleon and Claiborne Avenue. Proud to have been raised here, lived in New Orleans all my life, with the exception, sadly, I was a victim of crime in around 2000, and I took a little exodus and I moved to Orlando, Florida for about 10 years. I'm very blessed that I've traveled the world, seen good, and I've seen bad. Most people in the city know me because my father, John Skurlock, actually invented the very first inflatable amusement ride. That's a little bouncy castle thing that you see like at birthdays and fairs. He actually did that in my birth year in 1962, and I took it from his garage till we spread that magic throughout the world. So if you hear about my campaign, which you can look at skurlockformayor.com, it's all about fun. My personal platform is to make New Orleans fun again. And we believe by addressing all the issues, in fact, we, the residents, can enjoy our city just like the tourists that come around the world. So hang on and enjoy the show. Coming at you. New Orleans is dangerous for everyone. Rarely a day goes by where violent crime doesn't occur here. This has gone on far too long. We deserve to feel safe in our homes and neighborhoods. That's why I have a plan to put more police on our streets and keep our families safe, including Uberizing the police department.
Frank Skurlock for mayor.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Frank Skurlock, host of a new show called The Spirit of New Orleans. As I'd mentioned, I'm actually a candidate for mayor for this wonderful city, and we're going to be taking the next few weeks to go over and bring out all the different wonderful things that we'd like to see improved here. Our first platform as mayor is the ACE platform. A stands for affordable housing, C, crime prevention, and E, education. Today we have a special guest with us. We have a gentleman named Eugene Benn, who I've met and talked to about some affordable housing. So at this time, I'd like to introduce my guest, Mr. Eugene Benn. Welcome today.
How you doing, Frank? Good to see you again. I came to New Orleans about 12 years ago, right at the dawn of Katrina, from the New York City Housing Authority, where I worked as a senior project manager. The New York City Housing Authority is the biggest in the United States. And in 2005, we had an operating budget of about $5 billion a year.
$5 billion
a year.
Oh my.
We house close to 200,000 residents in the city of New York. And at the dawn of the Hurricane Katrina incident, I was sent over here to do infrastructure redevelopment for the city of New Orleans. And then as time went on, FEMA started to transition out. So basically what I did was, it was too late for me to go back to New York. I got used to the gumbo and all the food and all the good people.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Who asked you to come to New Orleans?
We were actually invited by FEMA. So basically, I became a FEMA contractor and consultant to do for infrastructure redevelopment. And at the same time, the city was getting ready to set up the Office of Recovery Management. And so basically, at that point, everything seemed to gel together.
And so Katrina, this August 29th exact, we're going to be celebrating our 12th anniversary. So that would have been in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
How long after that did it take to this program to start?
Most of what we have in the ground now, for instance, the three catalytic projects, which also I was involved with, B.W. Cooper, Harmony Homes, and Columbia Park, were basically looked at, studied by FEMA.
Can we clarify? Are those housing developments?
Yeah, those are new housing developments. That
Okay, they're new. So
yeah.
previously they had something there.
San Bernard's housing is now what we call Columbia Park. B.W. Cooper, I think, used to be Marrero Commons. And Harmony Homes used to be the old C.J. Pete housing development. And so basically when we came here as custodians to the city to basically do a lot of the repair work, it was probably decided after a while that the idea of returning the old buildings that we had on the ground, doing the cosmetics, washing things out, and basically putting them back to use would not suffice, because then you were looking at health issues from standing water, basically that had not been studied intensely.
So at the time when Katrina hit, I was actually living in Florida, but
Yes.
I own businesses, and as I mentioned before, I'd born and raised here. Is it safe to say that a review of the properties was reviewed and was probably determined the best use was to bring it down and then come back with something on top of it?
Sure.
Okay, and I actually noticed on the way to the studio today, I actually still saw a development, I believe it's on Earhart, just a bunch of concrete slabs sitting around. And it looked like it used to be something, but for some reason they took that down.
Those were the original housing that was in Marrero Commons. The first phase that's on the ground now is probably what you see when you're driving down Earhart.
Right.
But due to now we have a new government in place, but a lot of those.
What do you mean by a new government?
I mean, I'm talking about President Trump is now in place.
Because just for clarity's sake, is this a city event, or is this a federally, or maybe a state? Who ultimately funds this?
A lot of the housing development projects were funded by HUD and in hand with FEMA, and also with community block development grants.
Was there
CBDG.
any money that came from the coffers of the city of New Orleans?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge.
And it affects the residents of New Orleans, but yet, so we have these federal programs. Now, one of the things that we'd like to do is to get people hopefully out of the assisted housing. Do you have any background demographics to know how many of these people are actually employed, or what type of jobs they have, and what programs exist to hopefully help them move on?
I have been to a lot of town hall meetings that the sitting mayor has now has had, for the past 7.5 years in the city of New Orleans. But what sometimes is challenging to housing developers is that, apart from community development block grants, housing tax credits, and money from HUD and the city, there's usually a large donut hole that needs to be plugged, because a lot of those funds don't cover housing redevelopment 100%. So basically, the city, local government usually has to go out to bat to look for developers.
Absolutely. That's one of the things, because I'm about entrepreneurship. I'm about creating jobs. We're getting ready to go to a commercial break, but thank you for the great insight. And after we come back, I want to talk about programs that we can possibly do to get people out. Like you're saying, the city should outreach, and quite frankly, I'm going to position myself as an ambassador for this city to go out and get jobs. And the biggest industry currently is tourism. While that's great, and like you were talking to me earlier about one of the reasons why you stayed around, because of that wonderful food and the entertainment. But us as residents, we live here day in and day out. And we have our issues, the potholes. Sadly, right now there's an amazing crime wave that's really got to get out of control. And one of the common denominators I find about this crime is that nobody that's committing these crimes has great jobs. Quite frankly, most of them have no jobs. And until we fix that, it's going to be a repeating door over and over. But I want to ask you this, and this is going to be something I really want our audience to think about too.
Yes.
Is being incarcerated, which New Orleans is the largest incarcerated city in the United States, if not the world, is that actually considered housing? Think about that. I hope it's not, but let's figure out a way to get people out of the jails into perhaps a development, but most importantly, get them on their feet so they can go out there and they can own that great house. Because I understand you came from New York, it's a little bit more expensive up there, I believe.
Sure.
All right, we'll be back in a little bit. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Frank Skurlock with the Spirit of New Orleans, and you can check out our platform and a whole bunch of other great things at skurlockformayor.com. New Orleans is dangerous for everyone. Rarely a day goes by where violent crime doesn't occur here. This has gone on far too long. We deserve to feel safe in our homes and neighborhoods. That's why I have a plan to put more police on our streets and keep our families safe, including Uberizing the police department.
Frank Skurlock for mayor.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Frank Skurlock, host of The Spirit of New Orleans, a new TV show that's going to be on this network. It's going to outline different programs that, as I'm running for mayor of the city of New Orleans, we're going to share with our viewers how we think we're going to make New Orleans the greatest city in the world. My first platform that we've released is the ACE platform, ACE. A is affordable housing, C, crime prevention, and E, education. Today we have a special guest that his name is Eugene Benn. He's from New York City, and he came down after Katrina. And we're talking about how to actually make some significant changes to the housing in New Orleans. I'm going to talk myself from my own personal experience as I've traveled the world. I've seen different things. I personally lived for 10 years in a city called Celebration in Florida, which is a master plan community. We had incredible housing from retired to professionals to college students and even workers at Walt Disney World, which quite frankly, they're not the highest paid people, but they are very similar to here in tourists. And of course, one thing as we continue to get older, I'm very personally concerned about my retirement years, and I'm looking to see what we can do. And one thing I learned as a resident of New Orleans, that believe it or not, a third of our city is totally undeveloped. What third is that? That third is out in New Orleans East. It's just sitting there. It's got 5 interstate exits. If you look at it from the satellite, it says, come, help me, let's do something. And that's also where one of the worst areas of crime. So, thanks for being here, Eugene.
Thanks for having me, Frank. Taking away from what you just said about housing, as you know, last time I talked to you, I told you I was going to throw my hat into the District B race. And when I put up my hat as an architect, and when I put up my hat as a community activist, and I put on my hat as a parent and a concerned citizen, there are certain issues that trouble me, and I have outlined them here because sometimes I have a memory lapse. But I talk about when you look at the city, you look at neighborhoods and you look at structure and demographics. You look at crime, you look at land use, you look at workforce redevelopment, which we talked about
Absolutely.
When we had a break. And I was talking to you about the prison reentry program. But also, when you're looking at housing, there are policy planners need to look at issues that have to do with environmental justice and how we basically structure that around in planned unit developments. You know, if you're talking about whether we're talking about here in New Orleans or we're looking at New Orleans East, and for us to continue to basically try to accommodate people in New Orleans who are still in loss of a place to live. And you know, when we're talking about voucher programs, some people are holding vouchers and have nowhere to go. In fact,
Well, vouchers from where?
well, this are usually housing vouchers.
Why do they have that?
Well, housing vouchers basically is to help families basically who are, you know, below the AMI.
Oh, exactly. And so just for our audience to understand, and you know, I'm a very simple person. By the way, I need to declare, I don't have a college degree, but I'll tell you one thing I have is the College of Hard Knocks. I started
Sure.
work when I was 12. And there's a lot of big words thrown around about, you know, and it's not even really that big, you know, livable wage or sustainable wage and stuff. But one thing I think about this wonderful city, if you go back in time, I see these pictures of steamboats coming down the rivers, and you had all the farmers and the grain. My father always used to tell me that New Orleans should be the best city in the world because we control the port and the Mississippi River. And something happened along the way that while I think it was pretty thriving back then, but all of a sudden now there's so much blight, even with all the funds that came in from FEMA and insurance companies after Katrina, we still have blight. And at the same time, because everybody loves our city, especially Californians and the Hollywood craze coming here, they're the ones that are buying and raising all of our prices going up. So the locals that are stuck in jobs in the service sector, there's this great divide getting wider. And then you got the investors coming in and doing all this Airbnb stuff, which that's helping, not helping, it's killing, actually. The other people living there, and so they're selling out and they're moving farther, and we're losing some really good people. How are we going to fix this?
The city of New York, several years ago, had the same issues you have in East New Orleans, both in the South Bronx and over at Morningside Heights, Lower Morningside and Heights in Manhattan, where Columbia University had, you know, owned a lot of the land, but basically, not that they did not have the resources, but they needed to have local government engagement to start to do redevelopment and start to bring back those properties to use. And what happened with a lot of those areas is that there were residents who basically either were homeowners who were not necessarily falling on hard times, but who had been left properties basically, and when those properties transitioned to the 80s and the 90s, they did not have the sort of financial accommodations to fix those properties. So the city decided basically to go into looking at a sweat equity program, which, you know, I have been talking about for years since I came into the city. And what the sweat equity program does is something similar that a good friend of mine does outside the city in St. Charles Parish with the HUD rural program, where basically, Frank, you want to buy a house, you go into the rural program, but they cut the fat because you basically add resource into your housing development by basically helping on the site, by doing certain incrementals like management on the site that you don't have to put money out for, you don't have to go outside to look for. You were trained to do that yourself.
That sounds amazing. And one of the things, especially from the assisted living, which New Orleans has a tremendous amount. Do we know what percentage of our population is on assisted living?
I'm sure I'm sure you had the adage that African Americans are 60% of the population, or 55% unemployed. In the city,
What percent?
60%.
Unemployed.
55% unemployed, 60% of the population.
That is a tragedy.
Here in New
and
Orleans.
I got to tell you, that's actually one of the reasons why I believe I'm qualified. I create jobs. And I'm not going to say it's all going to be about me and my jobs, because I'm limited. But I want to be an ambassador to get people to come back to this city, bring them in, because this New Orleans East has something called no bid. That's the New Orleans East Industrial Development Park. There's nothing there. There really is nothing there. A friend of mine just opened up a production studio there last week. That's a start. NASA's there. And by the way, you know what? NASA didn't flood either. They did it the right way. They prepared. And those are great jobs. Those are engineers. Those are people that get things done. So it goes back to one of those other items in my platform, that education. But I will tell you this, until we address the crime issue in this city, it's going to be a revolving door that we're going to lose some great people.
Also, we cannot continue to bring people back in the city, release people who were former inmates back in the city and give them the basics and says you're on your own. Some of these people in the prison system earn high education degrees and can become useful custodians in the communities that they're sent back into. So when we start looking about arresting poverty out of the city by basically just going after people and locking them up, all we're doing is basically encouraging recidivism. I think what we need to invest in, I know that also we've looked at the transportation hub of the city. When you look at transportation in the city of New Orleans, and you look at other great cities like Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, we have not really paid much attention to doing serious redevelopment. I think I'm probably one of the people who live here who think that we should have a link between New Orleans and the capital, Baton Rouge.
Eugene, thank you very much for coming here. And as you and I both know, next year we're going to be celebrating 300 years in the city of New Orleans. I would like to ask your assistance to help it up, to have housing for the next 300.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thanks for having me.
All right. God bless you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Frank Skurlock, host of The Spirit of New Orleans. We're looking forward to doing some amazing things. Can't just be us. Can't just be City Hall. It's everybody's city. That's what New Orleans is all about. So come join the Skurlock for Mayor team, skurlockformayor.com. New Orleans is dangerous for everyone. Rarely a day goes by where violent crime doesn't occur here. This has gone on far too long. We deserve to feel safe in our homes and neighborhoods. That's why I have a plan to put more police on our streets and keep our families safe, including Uberizing the police department.
Frank Skurlock for mayor.
Well, here's my final thoughts on our first show. It's been an amazing time, had a special guest, learning about housing, and the very first thing that comes to my mind is that wonderful song, The House of the Rising Sun. It's in New Orleans. That's right, and it's time to get affordable housing for everyone. And I've got a plan as mayor. First off, we're gonna bring in jobs, and a lot of them, so we can have real money to spend on housing. Living in a prison is not a house. Living in a housing development shouldn't be a life enjoyment. It should be only temporary to give people hand-ups, not handouts forever and ever. We have a great opportunity. We have so much to be developed, especially eastern New Orleans, a third of the city sitting there vacant. I ran across this incredible book the other day called New Orleans Neighborhood. It's by a author named Maggie Bassanelli. She broke down all the primary neighborhoods of the city of New Orleans. Think about what we have. We have Uptown, we have the CBD, we have Gert Town, Pilot Town, West End, Garden District, Irish Channel, and everywhere in between. You know, New Orleans is amazing. We have culture from all around the world, and that's what truly makes us really the most diverse city in the world. However, currently we're not united. We're diverse, but we all have our gates that keeps us apart. As mayor, I will unite this entire city. We've been through so much. Think how resilient we were through Katrina to actually rebuild. And you know what? Most of all that happened not with local effort, but with efforts of local people utilizing insurance dollars and federal dollars. As mayor, I will put together a coalition of a team of citizens and in turn work with the residents, because it's our town. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's ours, and that means every single body. It doesn't matter if you're retired, if you're a youth, if you're employed, or if you're not. But I will tell you, housing in a prison is not an option, folks. That's not good. We should take no pride in being the most incarcerated city in the world. We can change that. Also, housing in a housing development, which by the way is not city, it's federal. We need to change that too. You know what? That should only be for the hand-ups while people are going through transitions and stuff. It's not a life place to live. That's one of the big problems. If you think about the days the founding fathers 300 years ago put together this city, we didn't have these issues back then. Something happened along the way that we need to figure out what went wrong and figure out what went right and do it again. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter if you're an individual, a family, or a corporation, or even a government. It takes a budget. It takes responsibility. We have to be good stewards with what we've been entrusted with. That, as a mayor, as the mayor of New Orleans and the soon-to-be best city in the world, I will bring to the table. You know what? I can't do it alone. I need your help. Please join the Scurlock team, and you can visit us at scurlockformayor.com. It's been an amazing first show on the spirit of New Orleans, and we look forward to breaking down crime and education in our next shows. God bless.